Hello folks and welcome to Paddock Pass, the Italian Grand Prix edition, pre-race 2016. What a great weekend we had in Spa. What a wonderful race it was, but also what a controversial race. I don't think Max Verstappen was quite expecting the backlash that he experienced in the aftermath of the race, not just from his fellow drivers, but throughout the media. Max Verstappen has pretty much, to a man, been pilloried for the way in which he drove. It was driving, let's not forget, that didn't see him even investigated, let alone penalised. We said at the time we thought Max had gone a little bit over the edge of what is acceptable. However, there is a difference between what is acceptable within the regulation and what is acceptable as racers between races. And it would seem that where Max has gone beyond the limit is in that notion of what is acceptable on a racetrack between racing drivers. Let's call it, well, as Mercedes did between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton, the rules of engagement. It's an unwritten code, shall we say, between drivers of what you can and what you can't do. Yes, Max was totally within the regulations, but was he correct in the way he raced? Questions we put to him, as did the majority of the world, just over there at Red Bull a few moments ago. Always in the headlines for the right or for the wrong reasons. Are you surprised there's been such a negative reaction to the way in which you raced in Belgium?
No, because everybody has their own opinion, of course. It can be positive or negative. Even from something positive, they can make something negative. But it's all right, you know. I didn't really focus too much on it. I went home, enjoyed my free time with some friends again and family, which is also very important. And from there, when you just recharge again to get ready here for Monza.
To have multiple world champions, though, question the style of your driving, is that something that perhaps you should be listening to?
I've had worse critics, so I think my dad is always the worst critic in my life. So I think that's the one where I have always listened to also in my younger years, and it brought me up here. So I just try to do the same thing, the same driving like I did, because that's what brought me here.
That driving, though, a lot of drivers have said it falls underneath what's an acceptable level of ethical driving, maybe within the legal regulations, but not an ethical way of driving. How would you counter those accusations?
Yeah, well, I mean, you always try to find the limits, and I think that's what I'm doing, because that's how you perform. That's what I've always been doing. So for me, it doesn't really change a lot. I just do my thing.
If one day you pull a move as you are doing, which is within legal limits, admittedly, would you say it's down to luck or judgment that you've managed to avoid an accident so far?
No, it's just because racing drivers are designed to fight on the limit, and I think for us it's easy to see what is possible or not. So I think that's why we are not crashing.
Max Verstappen doing what Max Verstappen does best. Giving an answer to a question, but I wonder if he is really taking this all on board. He has had nothing but praise since he came into Formula One. I'm as guilty as the next person for shoveling coal into the engine of the hype train to keep it steaming along. And he is a phenomenal talent. I genuinely believe that. But as with all young racing drivers when they come in, perhaps just needs to tone it down a touch, because the last thing anybody wants is for this phenomenally gifted driver with a huge future ahead of him to be involved in something worse than, you know, a little contact. The last thing anybody wants is for this guy to lose that confidence and to lose that beautiful racecraft that a big accident could bring to him. Perhaps he will only listen to his team boss. He said he listens to his dad. Perhaps his team boss might be able to give him a measure of the way in which he needs to think, but perhaps his team boss won't see any need to until Max and Daniel Ricciardo go one-on-one with each other. Perhaps if Daniel, who is as hard a racer but as fair a racer as they come, if he sees something untoward with the way in which Max races, perhaps then Max might listen. What does Daniel think of the way in which they race? They have, of course, not raced together, wheel to wheel as yet, but Daniel's obviously seen the races back. What does he think moving forward of the way in which his teammate is racing in Formula One? I'm sure you've watched a replay of the last Grand Prix. What do you make of the altercations your teammate got himself into?
It's, you know, I see Kimi's point of view, but I know obviously Max, he's a racer, you know, and I think that's obviously a good thing he's got going for him. He's determined, and he's sort of not really keen to be pushed over on track. So I think he's got the right intentions and the right drive and desire. So that's something which, you know, you don't want to take away from the kid. And it's great when you're racing him, you know, you've got a fight on your hands. I think, you know, moving sort of the stuff Kimmy's not happy about, moving late under braking, that it's always been a bit of a touchy subject. It's one that us drivers, we do discuss and we sort of try and avoid it. So yeah, it was obviously on the limit. Kimmy and a few others thought it was over the limit. So Max is still young, I think, as well. That's something we got to understand, and he will, you know, make mistakes, or there's still a lot of room to grow for him. So maybe this was just a lesson that he'll take with him and learn from it, or change a little bit from it. But I don't think it will happen necessarily overnight, but I think over time, you know, it's just going to come with a bit of maturity. So it's all right. It is what it is.
As it isn't it? Because he's not actually broken any regulations. The stewards haven't found anything wrong with his driving. There's just there's sort of an understanding between drivers of there's a certain way in which you race that comes with, as you say, perhaps experience.
Yeah, I think so. You know, we all want to race hard, or at least I know I do, and I think obviously Max has showed that. And there's like, you can race hard and just have like that little bit, that tiny bit of respect still. And you know if that guy's outfoxed you or done something, then all right, you can't really fight any harder for that position. You've got to let it go. And I think that's probably just on the edge now, where, you know, you probably just need that little bit of sort of, I don't know, I guess the word's probably respect, but yeah, it'll come with age. You know, I probably only found it, you know, a couple of years ago, so he's obviously a lot younger, and I wasn't anywhere near Formula One at his age, so he'll discover it.
And just a final one, as you're probably the guy who knows him the best, Felipe Massa is going to retire at the end of the year. What's Formula One losing? What kind of a guy is he?
Absolutely a great person. You know, off the track, he's really become one of my, you know, good friends in the paddock. And you know, when I got to Formula One, it was like, you know, you don't really have friends in this sport. It's very individual, and you just get your job done. But yeah, definitely got to know him well, and can definitely call him a friend. I think on track he's always been a good competitor. Stands on his 2 feet and fights a good fight. But off track he's very humble, very family man, orientated, and a lot of similarities I see. The way he was brought up and the way I was brought up, a lot of our family values are similar. So I think that's, you know, one thing we got in common, and why we're able to get on as well as we do. So wish him well. Retiring's not easy, but very happy for him that he's made the decision. It's obviously the right time, and yeah, see what the future brings. I know you might have Filipino coming up through the ranks, and might see him here in 10 or 12 years' time. We'll see.
Now, at the end of that interview, obviously, you heard me reference the fact that Felipe Massa will be leaving Formula One at the end of the year. When it was revealed earlier on today that Claire Williams and Felipe Massa would be having a joint press conference, I think everybody knew what was coming. Felipe Massa deciding to go out with his head held high rather than having the team or anybody else decide his fate for him. An honourable thing to do. A man who, honestly, is one of the great warriors of this sport, who I think will forever be remembered for the incredibly dignified way in which he accepted defeat in the 2008 Formula One World Championship. Whether you supported him or not, I don't think you can fail to have a huge amount of respect for Felipe Massa and the way he dealt with that, the way he came back from that horrible accident at the Hungaro Ring. Really one of the good guys, and I think everybody here will be sad to see him go. Question now is, who replaces Felipe Massa at Williams? You would think that Williams, as it is, would be a prime team for a driver to move to, but who is going to move there? Will it be Sergio Perez? Could it be Felipe Nasr moving back? Will they promote young Alex Lynn into the position? Many questions. The bookies at the moment have their money on Jenson Button filling that role and ending his career at the team which he started. But is it that simple, Jenson? Is it? Hello, Jenson.
Good afternoon.
There's obviously going to be a lot of talk around you now that Felipe's announced his retirement as to whether or not you'll be staying at McLaren or going straight in, or whether you'll be going back to Williams.
I'm sure they will, but I won't be involved in it.
Is it something that might interest you if there is no future at McLaren for you next year, going back to where it all started?
I've got no other talk on my future. I mean, you're going to ask me the question. I understand that, but there's nothing else to say. I'm here to have some fun this weekend, enjoy the weekend, and hopefully see our progress, even from the last race. So yeah, that's what I'm here to do.
And hopefully for more than 4 corners. How disappointing was that, given the progress that you'd seen, the advances that you'd made since the summer break?
Yeah, starting in P9, but then also I had the best start by a long way, and I was up into 6th, definitely 7th. Just chose the wrong side at the start, and incident in front, so I went off the circuit, came back on, and then it all went a bit crazy at turn 5. I got punted up the rear. It's not my bag, so that was it, game over.
The race that Fernando had, though, from the very last position on the grid, must give you guys confidence moving into the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think if you look at it as a race from the red flag, him starting 4th, he ended up 7th, and he stayed in front of the Williams and a Ferrari. So yeah, that is positive. So, it's progress, and I think it's one of the most difficult circuits for a Spa. Here is also not easy, but I still think we can have a reasonable result here.
Now it is, of course, the Italian Grand Prix weekend this weekend. Lots of talk about Felipe Massa retiring one of his former teammates at Ferrari, of course, Kimi Räikkönen. Kimi, who was embroiled himself in the furore with Max Verstappen in Spa. Kimi himself said in the press conference earlier that Sebastian Vettel has apologised to him for the Turn 1 incident that saw the 2 Ferrari drivers make contact, not for the first time this year, and Sebastian Vettel spin. Vettel just said he had anticipated Räikkönen being there, but not Verstappen being up on the inside. I'd love to bring you some words from Sebastian Vettel, but Ferrari decided that it would be a great idea just to drag him away before we got a chance to speak to him. So, grazie mille Ferrari for that. Not that anybody in America supports Ferrari or loves Ferrari or wants to hear about Ferrari from a 4-time Formula 1 world champion. I'll just grind my axe on that. But we did hear from Kimi for all of about 45 seconds. Kimi going into great detail, I think, talking to us about what we were talking about earlier, in fact, that concept of ethics in driving and whether Max Verstappen had overstepped a mark with the way he drove in Spa. Kimi, looking at Spa, obviously the stewards decided there was nothing wrong in the way that Max drove, but obviously there's a code of conduct that you as racing drivers follow. What's the difference between rules as they're laid out and the code of conduct as you understand it between each other?
Well, I don't know if there is one. I mean, there's rules, and I think in anything in F1, people will push the rules to the limits, and you get away with it, you don't get away. It's how it goes, but. It's, I think in certain ways it should be, we have to respect each other, and sometimes obviously we push and we go over the lines, but we have to learn from it and try to be a bit more correct next time. But I think in the long run everything will be fine, and it's just a lot of talking right now.
You said you guys need to respect each other. Is that the issue, do you think? You think Max has come in without respect for you, Grove? I know you've said that you think he's doing a good job, but do you think he lacks that respect?
No, I don't think it's purely respect, but I think obviously there was incidents in the start and people get upset, and obviously when you start purposely then kind of paying back from it, I don't think it's a correct sport for it, because obviously even you are a bit angry, and it can get unfortunately very, very dangerous. So it's many small things. So like I said, I'm sure things will sort it out.
That Belgian Grand Prix, of course, was punctuated by a red flag, which came out after Kevin Magnussen had a massive crash coming up through Eau Rouge. Car twisted on him coming through Radion. He caught it just, but went. And he went into the barriers. Luckily, rear end first. It took a lot of the force out of the crash. Car totaled. Obviously has a new tub this weekend, new chassis down there at Renault. But Kevin has been passed this morning by the FIA as fit to race. And here he is talking about what he remembers of what was a pretty big shunt last Sunday. That was a biggie. How did you feel on Monday morning?
I felt a little bit stiff, but you know, I had no injuries, no broken bones, nothing serious. So it was just a bit of pain in my muscles.
Car looked to go very light over the crest. Was it just a simple case of losing the car underneath you, or had something gone wrong before that?
No, I think it was just, you know, I went a little bit hard over the curb, and then the car bounced on the ground, and you know, hit a bump off the curb in an unfortunate moment, and I lost the rear. You know, lost control of the rear, and spun around.
From that point, you're just a passenger, obviously. How important is it to get back in the car? How important is it that you've got to race the very next weekend so you can get straight back out there, straight back on the bike as it was?
I mean, it hasn't frightened me at all. It's, you know, it's a hard impact, but it's very clear that the sport is very safe. There's nothing to be afraid of. So, you know, it could have been whatever 2 weeks between. I'll be fine. You know, I'm eager to get back in. Looking forward to the race as any race.
You young guys don't seem to be afraid of anything. A lot of talk about Max Verstappen at the moment, obviously the youngest guy in the field, his driving style and the way he goes about it, his racing. We know there are laws in the sport of what you can and can't do, but there's also a code, isn't there, of conduct between racing drivers of what you deem to be an acceptable way of racing. Does that change at all when you get to Formula One, or is it something that you learn at a younger age?
I don't really think there's any code of conduct. I don't know it anyway. But I think there is pretty clear rules, well, I don't know if they're clear, but there are many rules in the sporting regulations, and sometimes it's a bit difficult to how to interpret it. And the real problem, I think, is that there are inconsistencies, and perhaps Max has found out that he can get away with quite, you know, most of the things that he's trying, and why wouldn't you use that? I would as well if I had that feeling. So, you know, hopefully the FA will be more consistent, and you know, they have a tough job on their hands because every situation is different. But it is just my opinion that sometimes, you know, other people don't get away with the stuff that he gets away with. So that's how it is, and you know, there's nothing against him. I would do the same if I was in this situation.
So every man for himself, no code of conduct, stay within the regulations, push it as far as you can. Let's go racing. Elbows out, roll up your sleeves.
Definitely.
Which leaves us with the championship leader. Lewis Hamilton took 3 engine penalties last time out in Spa. Now, a lot of people have said to me, oh, what's wrong with Mercedes engines that Lewis had to take 3 engine penalties? I'm going to simplify this very easily for you. Basically, he had gone to the end of how many engines he was allowed in the season without getting a penalty. What he did in Spa, what Mercedes did in Spa, was with each practice session, they ran a brand new power unit. Every single element of the power unit brand new. By introducing them all on the same weekend, it means that you put them into what's known as the pool of engines that he can then use for the rest of the season. Also, by doing it on the same weekend, he amassed all of his penalties in one go, so that he just took it from the back of the grid. And because we now exist in an era where you don't have rollover penalties to the next race or time penalties within the race, if you can't take all 60-odd grid penalties that he got for those engine changes, it means that it's essentially a loophole within the regs that he can just introduce 3 new engines to the mix. Very, very smart. He then raced from 21st, pardon me, from 21st all the way through to 3rd and a podium. The team, in looking at their best expectations for the race, said, Lewis, we reckon 8th is about where you can finish. The red flag helped him out greatly. He finished 5 places higher than expectations. Got to be made up with that, because with his teammate winning, he only lost 10 points in the championship battle. Lewis, last race, the expectation was that you would finish P8. You finished a lot better than that. Was that a massive thing for you to finish so far above where the simulation had put you?
Well, the simulation is really an idea of what's possible, but it doesn't mean, you know, particularly when there's still space above, doesn't mean that, you know, I see it 8th and I don't take much notice of that. I just realized that really just shows you the toughness of the challenge, really, for me. But yeah, to be able to come from where we were and with all the circumstances that were situations that were put in front of us and come out cleanly and come out third and have 3 engine penalties, yeah, I'm very, very, very happy with that. Very grateful because it could have easily been the other way. I could have a punctured tire, I could have retired, could have finished out of the top 10, could have lost 25 points. You know, so many different things. So
When you came into this sport, you came in on a wave of hype. But a lot of people said you were racing a little bit too hard, you were taking risks you didn't need to do. How tough is it for you as a young driver to listen to the advice of others and not think they're just trying to slow you down?
I think that's a good question. I think naturally when when we're all young, we're learning all the time. I remember when I got here, obviously I had raw speed, but I didn't have all the. I was still growing, I was still maturing. I didn't have all the knowledge to stabilize myself and add to that raw talent. And that was just bit by bit you're adding the pieces to the puzzle, and that's normal. Whether or not you have to listen to every single other person's opinion, I don't agree with that personally, because who am I, who are you, who is anyone to tell someone the path in which they're supposed to choose and the mistakes they're supposed to do. I think for me, discovering and making our own mistakes is the only way you learn. And me growing up personally, my dad would say don't do that because he's done it already, and so you don't do it, but down the line you end up still making the mistake, and it was better that I made it earlier on because I would have matured earlier, you know what I mean? And so it's about trial and error, and I think we've got an 18-year-old kid here who's a kid compared to me, and he's learning, but he's rapid, he's obviously great, and he's going to continue to improve his racecraft over time.
And in those early years, one of your big rivals was Felipe Massa. You had a great championship fight with him in 2008. Your thoughts on him as a racing driver? Now he's announced his retirement.
What a career he's had. I've had some incredible battles with him, some good, some bad, but I've had some really great times with him, particularly, before Formula One and also through Formula One. And hearing that he's retiring was obviously a surprise when I heard about it this morning, but also kind of a realization of our ages, and as he leaves, there's maybe 4 or 5, including him, that are ahead of me in age, and that's one less. And bit by bit, they're gonna retire over time, and eventually I'll be the oldest one, and it'll be then my turn. But I wish him all the best, and super grateful that I got to race with a great driver like him.
So that's your lot from Paddock Pass here in Monza. Just a few days have passed, of course, since that great race in Spa. And the focus is, of course, with Max Verstappen at Red Bull Racing. As Felipe Massa's dad walks down the paddock, we're going to tell you what, we're going to miss not just Felipe Massa, but his whole family. They've become such a part of the Formula One fraternity, of the paddock. Lovely, genuinely lovely family. Felipe's wife and son always here. It's he's going to be a big loss, I think, to the paddock. One of the good guys. Anyway, what were we saying? Max Verstappen, that's the thing. So many questions over him. Will he change his driving style? I don't think so. As K-Mag said, some drivers consider that there's a code. Some of them don't. Roll up your sleeves, elbows out. It's time to get fighting. Here's your times of where you can catch everything this weekend here in Monza. The sun is out at La Pista Magica. It's going to be a great weekend. We can't wait to bring it all to you on NBCSN. It's always such a joy to come here. The Tifosi out en masse, hoping to see a Ferrari victory. Don't think that's going to happen, sadly, for them. But they will be out in force. The Verstappen fans will be out in force. Last time for the Dutch fans to see Verstappen in Europe before we go on the flyaway races. It should be a great one. It always is. There's something incredibly special, incredibly magical about Monza. They call it La Pista Magica, the magic track, and it really is that. And you're reminded of it every time we come back here. Super fast, super hot. It's going to be a super weekend. Thanks for joining us. For Paddock Pass, thanks a lot. See you later.